Howdy, folks. Happy Friday.
It is urgent. Game 7. It's urgent. It's urgent. Foreigner had it right.
Oh God, no! It was just perfect timing. As soon as I hit the live button, we heard Foreigner 4 there for a second.
Yep.
Okay. Thank God it's Friday. Long weekend, Labor Day weekend. Russ, start us off with the pre-show.
Yeah, interesting milestone yesterday. Clayton Kershaw was the third youngest pitcher to get to 2,500 strikeouts. 32 years, 168 days. Like, they get crazy with this stuff. But my big question is, because he might have a shot at some of the immortals. You know, Seaver's around 3,600, Ryan's 5,700. Are we saying this is an easy strikeout era? Because to me, it is. Like, with all the launch angle, strikeouts have to be up, I want to say, 25% from the 70s and 80s, probably even more. So I don't know how to view this now, because I can't – if he were to break Ryan's record, which he won't, but if he were to get 5,000 strikeouts, I don't know if I could view it the same way as some of the other guys.
Well, it's an easier strikeout era, but the fact that these pitchers don't pitch as long as, say, Seaver did in his era.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true too.
Yeah, how many complete games? I'm looking at, because I actually still had his stats up. From 67 when he started his career to 77, he pitched between 13 to 21 complete games every year.
Yeah.
And in his career, that's how many? 231 complete games. Kershaw, I'll bet you he'll be in single figures.
Right.
Maybe double, low
so
double.
Is that the equalizer? Does that make it fair then?
Yeah, I think so. Hey, Kev.
Hey, how are you? I mean, don't forget also, you have 7-inning doubleheaders now, right? So games aren't as long also. You have the use of relievers, so pitchers aren't going as long as they used to. So the number of innings pitched is down. The thing with Kershaw also is, remember, he's had some arm woes. So just because he's gotten 2,500 now, I don't even – look, we presume 3,000 is pretty much a given, though the last couple of years he's missed an enormous amount of time due to a variety of ailments. And while I do still think he is a Hall of Famer based upon what his career is, the longevity piece of the puzzle is far from determined given what we've seen.
No, that's true. And Kev, I was just asking, is 2,500 strikeouts still 2,500 strikeouts because of the way batters are striking out at record rate with the launch angle? But then these guys came up with good points, you know, with other things that have changed in the game. Guys don't pitch complete games. Guys don't stay in as long. So, it might equal out. That might actually be a real good number.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It really has, changed everything that we just don't pitch. I mean, we were just talking on, they were the broadcasters in the last week were talking on Detroit Tigers broadcast about, Mickey Lolich one year having, 40 complete games and 370 innings pitched. Like,
had to be 68. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was really remarkable. How guys would just go and go and go, and they had rubber arms. And
Kev, you'll appreciate this. So probably when I was about 10 or 12 years old, I think it was about that age, Mickey Lolich was a Met and clearly past his Tigers prime. And there was a thing called Camera Day, and you would go and you take guys' pictures. And Mickey Lolich rode in from like center field on his motorcycle.
Yeah, no, that was a big thing in Detroit that he used to ride to the games. And the other thing is Mickey Lolich had his own donut shop.
That's not shocking to me based on his build.
Well, I mean, he actually, he just didn't lend his name to it. Like, he made the donuts. He got at 4 o'clock in the morning, and that was his retirement job. Back then you had to have a retirement job.
Right.
So he was baseball's answer to Tim Horton, basically. So.
Nice. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
hey guys. Sorry, I'm at a doctor's thing with my son, so I might have to jump off pretty quickly. So maybe we could get started here. And
we can start now. Go.
Yep. All right.
Thanks. Okay. I apologize for that.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know what the hell the date is. Is it the 4th?
Friday, September 4th, 2020.
All right. Hello, Hockey World. It's Friday, September 4th, 2020.
I'm Michael Agello, and I guess I'm ex-calendar.
I'm Jan Levine, and thank God somebody is.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen.
And I'm Eklund. And Mike, you're so much more than that. You know that.
Yeah, it's up for debate.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast, and I'm wrong. I'm going to tell you I was wrong today because you guys completely always bust on me because I'm getting every series right this playoffs, just because my predictability and my locks.
It's that humbleness that keeps us coming back, Eck.
My 5 locked games all came in, so just because of that. But I picked the Islanders in 6. I was wrong. There you go. So yeah, but wow, what a night. I mean, I have never. Can we start with the Islanders Flyers for a second, because I may have to run. But
yeah,
I mean, I've never ever in my existence seen watching all these games, seen a team that doesn't deserve to be in Game 7 more than the Flyers. Like I just feel that way. Like this is the Islanders should have won this twice over, maybe 3 times over. The Islanders should have maybe swept the series. I mean,
but they didn't. That's the point.
But they didn't, and that's the crazy thing about the sport. I mean, it's just this is it's funny when a team gets to almost to a conference final and you're saying to yourself they're not playing well. Yeah. And you're looking at all the teams who aren't playing at all, right? But the Flyers, I haven't won once during this playoffs, even against Montreal, have I once said that they're playing well, and yet here they are, 1 win or 1 bounce away from the conference finals. It's just crazy. I mean, they're really getting outplayed. The Islanders are, I mean, geez, they are out playing them in every which way, in my opinion.
Well,
what are your thoughts on that?
That being said, Kev, the Flyers take a 2-0 lead in that game, not particularly getting many shots on goal, not particularly getting many good scoring chances. And then I have to give the Islanders credit. They rallied and they had a lead they took the lead with I think 11 seconds left to go in the second period. But you have to say the Flyers have battled through and get a Game 7 not playing at their best.
Well, for sure. And I just had this conversation. Like, isn't that what playoffs are about? I mean, isn't it the ability just to find different ways to win when you're not at your best? And it's the same thing with the Canucks and the Vegas Golden Knights. Like, if you're watching that series, there's no question that the Vegas Golden Knights are a better team right now,
right? In
terms of delivering the goods and being effective and getting shots on goal and doing everything. But here we are. Game 7, because the Canucks have ended up with some great goaltending performances, and in the one game they had 40 blocked shots. So even though they're being outplayed, they found a way to do it. But I think that's what playoffs are kind of about, and they've always been about. I just think we're kind of noticing it more now because the uniqueness of this format. So I think that happens more than we think it does in the past as well, where teams have played as well.
I mean, look, Hart didn't have a particularly great game, but he made the right saves at the right times. A couple big stops on Anders Lee, made big saves in overtime, and that was enough to get his team by. I said I picked the Flyers in 7, but I said it's going to be hard if they think they're going to win 4 games in overtime, and they've won 3 in overtime, and no team has ever won 4 overtime playoff games, never.
No,
so
this is insane. I mean, it really the way they're playing. I'm sorry, Jen, go ahead.
So I was going to say, I mean, to me yesterday, what we saw was Isles' fourth line dominance again, right? That fourth line just is continually carrying play.
Yeah.
Martin is just everywhere. And you saw also they actually moved him up to the second line a little bit yesterday. He was playing with Nelson a little bit, with Bouvier a little bit yesterday, which I thought was interesting. I mean, Hart, I know a lot of Islander fans were all over Varlamov last night, and I'm not sure why, because I don't know if he could have stopped any of those goals. We would have liked to see a momentum-changing save like Demko and like Hart was making, but I don't put it on Varlamov. But I do know some of my friends who are Islander fans are seriously considering whether or not Greiss should be between the pipes. But to me, yesterday, it was Carter Hart was the story of that game. I mean, like
I think you're going to see it.
It was Hart was just ridiculous last night.
I think you're going to see Greiss.
Wait, not ridiculous for the whole game. He let in some bad goals,
but on balance, Russ, he was just on con. There was at least 5 or 6 other goals that could have happened in that game.
Okay, but
given
that's
some
fair.
of the saves that he made.
That's fair.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say this: Varlamov, and I texted you guys this during the game. He does look like, I mean, he is shaking right now. There's no 2 ways about it. Like, and I'm not saying he's not. He could have had the goals, but he's also playing a little small. Like
yeah, he is.
He's the kind of goalie that looks smaller when he's not playing well. He kind of crunches his body in. His whole like mannerisms. He's just playing a little bit small for him. And I think you're going to see Greiss. I do. I don't think they have any choice but to go to Greiss.
There's a chance because Trotz looked really pissed off yesterday.
Well,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Kevin that because and it's sort of present in every series where the team was up 3-1 and now they're going into Game 7, that these teams like Dallas and Vegas and the Islanders have to, sort of quell their rage, because honestly, I think all these teams thought they were going to advance. I'm sure the coaches thought that they were going to advance up 3-1. And now, because their teams have let them down, I think the coaches are pissed off. I think the players are pissed off. And in a one-game scenario, if you go into that game pissed off and taking one stupid penalty, you could kill yourself and end your season. And it's going to be interesting to see which of Dallas, Vegas, and the Islanders can control their emotions.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the only series where I wonder in that Dallas series, it almost felt even when Dallas was up 3-1 that they didn't play with confidence. They knew that Colorado was the better team.
Yeah.
Even when they were up 3-1, they knew. Obviously there were injuries in that series, but I really felt like Dallas went into almost scared going into Game 5.
Yeah.
You could just kind of sense this, but I just want to make one point.
Yeah.
You admitted where you were wrong. This is where I was wrong. Like, I thought it was the worst move possible for the Canucks when they went to Thatcher Demko. and
Really?
my reasoning on that was, look, I agreed that Markstrom looked fatigued. However, you're trying to sign this guy.
You're trying to
back. He's part of your group.
Yeah.
You want him to come back. And so you switch goalies at that time. Like, I thought it was a real poor message to send, especially because I didn't think they could come back.
Right.
Well, I gotta say this, Kev.
He's also okay, go ahead, go address.
I was just gonna say, if Demko wins Game 7, I don't think they're signing Markstrom. I think they're gonna let that go.
Is that possible?
No,
Is that really?
Yes, it was.
I said that 2 days ago. I said it
That
last
does
night
not seem
on
possible
Twitter.
to me, guys. I
Put
mean,
it up by yesterday. They will use that money, in my opinion, to make an offer on Torrey Krug. That's my viewpoint.
Well, let me throw this out though. I mean, is that a way to do business?
No.
Based on 2 games that
No.
Hold on. I mean,
Demko is not a prospect, right?
He's
Demko
their
is the guy we
MVP, guys.
thought
This
was the answer.
Markstrom is their MVP.
not anymore. He's not. They would have been out
even in the playoffs. No, even
Well,
in the playoffs. He's been
This may change it. In listening to Elliot Friedman this morning, Markstrom is injured. They're saying Markstrom is injured.
Yeah, but even if he's injured, I think you're talking about Demko has been a solid backup.
No. I'm not talking about the future. I'm talking about putting Demko in Game 5.
He's going in. I mean, there's no question.
They had no choice, right?
Exactly.
But just because they had no choice doesn't mean if Demko got blown out, we would not be having this conversation right now. Demko is the reason why they won the last. I mean, you could see Vegas getting visibly frustrated on the ice that they can't beat this guy and figure out how to beat him.
Beyond awful yesterday. Demko wasn't in net. They would have lost. It's not even close.
They would have lost Game 5 too.
But here's my point though. Prior to that happening, it wasn't that long ago. It was a month ago. I had conversations with general managers around the league about what would happen with free agents, and everybody said the same thing, that they all thought Markstrom would get re-signed, that he was part of that group, that they really liked him. As somebody just pointed out, I think it was Zach, he was their MVP this season.
Yeah.
He was the primary reason. Now all of a sudden, and the other thing, the important thing is that even though they liked Thatcher, they weren't in love with him.
Right.
That he's a prospect, but he's never quite been exactly what they'd hoped he would be. Now here we are a month later, and we've seen him now in 2 very big games rise up, and now all of a sudden the plans are okay. Goodbye, Markstrom. Thatcher's our guy.
Well,
insane.
I think there's a very good chance.
Totally insane. It's totally insane.
They couldn't come to terms with Markstrom. They were negotiating with him.
That's what I've heard over the last month. They've tried to negotiate with Markstrom, and Markstrom's camp has been very sort of standoffish. They're probably looking for in excess of $6 million on a long-term deal.
What's interesting about that, Mike, is that this, I've heard the same thing, and I heard they were getting frustrated with it. But Markstrom had them over a barrel because he was their MVP, and they basically was, they really had to sign him because he was that good. And Markstrom's agents may have overplayed their hand now that this has happened. Demko's looking at this now. We're like, oh man, now Demko, and suddenly this gives the Canadiens a lot more negotiating power. And as like you said, Kevin, you don't want to do this, but at the same time, maybe it turns out to be brilliant for them. Maybe they get Markstrom for less.
Yeah, I mean, it could, but I mean, and the other thing that's worth, and this is going on a tangent, but I think it does fit here. Where are all these goalies going to go? Like,
I know.
You look at the free agent list of goalies, and there's a bundle of guys, and all of them have some reason for you to like them. Leonard has played very, very well. Mark Crawford has Mark Crawford. What's Crawford's first name?
Corey Crawford.
Corey Crawford has a pedigree. Holtby has a pedigree of the sort. Murray is young and has won Stanley Cups. There's a lot of guys out there who you could see are desirable. And now I look around the league and at the teams that are looking for goalies, and there aren't that many. So it's going to be difficult. Like, I think somebody's going to end up with a nice goalie for a really bargain price.
I agree with that.
And
that'll happen.
I'll extend on that tangent.
You guys, I gotta go. I'll be back.
Okay. All right. No problem. I'll extend on that tangent, Kev, because we've been hearing about the talk about Frederik Andersen in Toronto, and Elliot Friedman this morning was talking about that Kyle Dubas had contacted Andersen and said, we're not shopping you, but we're getting a lot of interest from you. And I don't know how true that is. General managers usually will cover themselves in terms of discussing things, but Andersen is another one with 1 year left on his contract, but the Leafs might be out there looking at the landscape of all these goaltenders out there and saying, I can get a starting goaltender who is as good or better than Andersen in a market where I can get that guy for 3 or 4 years at $5 million, where Andersen might want to raise after next year if the Leafs go far in the playoffs. So teams are going to be putting themselves in this market because the market is flooded. And
I think there'll be a few musical chairs. I think Lundqvist will be going back, and I don't think he'll be getting traded. I think there's a good chance maybe Corey Crawford ends up going back because he doesn't get the contract he wants. Right. I think a few of those will work out that way.
But on top of Holtby, on top of Crawford, you've got Khudobin, you've got Greiss. Now, I don't know if anybody's going to be willing to make Anton Khudobin their number one based on what he's done with Dallas, but he's a 1B who can play 30 games, and that might be if Vancouver is looking at their goaltending situation and they're going to have to spend $6 million to sign Markstrom, they may say, okay, I'd rather pay $3 or $3.5 million on a Greiss or on a Khudobin and go with Demko as my number one, and then save money and then go out and try to sign Torrey Krug.
So to me, Mike, it's all asset management, just like everything is, right? But in a flat cap, asset management takes on even increased importance because you have to now basically have a budget that you didn't think 6 months ago that you were having, because all of us expected an $85 million cap with about a $4 million increase. Now you're taking that $4 million off. So even though Markstrom was as good as he was, if his asking price hasn't budged and you're looking at Demko going, you know what, maybe he's now flipped the switch, and granted, small sample size, all the caveats apply. You need a blue liner, right? Russ said their blue line's been horrific this series. Tanev was a little bit better. Hughes has been brilliant. You got to use that money to bring in a blue liner. You have to make tough decisions. Markstrom may end up being the odd man out. You sign that 1B type of guy, as you mentioned, Greiss or somebody else, save a couple $1 million and apply that towards your defenseman. That may improve your overall team, even though you want to bring Markstrom back.
I'll go one step further. For whatever reason, they're saying Michael DiPietro is unfit to play in Vancouver. We had a really good year in Utica. You get a 1 year backup for Demko. The next year you've got Michael DiPietro as your backup, and he was a highly touted goalie for them. So they do have a backup plan there for Markstrom. They do.
Or you go 2 years on a low price guy because you need a guy to expose in the expansion draft anyway, right? You bring a guy in for that second year. Now you can expose him. If he goes, he goes, and you have DiPietro sitting there in the minors to come up next year.
Yep.
So sticking with
one more thing, Mike.
Yeah, go ahead.
One more thing. This game we talked about it. We talked to Rasmus Dahlin a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
What we've seen out of Cale Makar and especially Quinn Hughes is just ridiculous. The level of skill that Hughes has, the speed, the decision making, but not only that, the willingness to make plays. Right, he's not afraid to make a mistake. Right. You can see from his rushes, going deep, going around the net, the ability to get back. They have had no answer for him the last two games.
Well,
Golden Knights.
Yeah, he's got the best hockey IQ I've ever seen. I mean, I've said it over and again because I don't ever see where he's just having trouble making a decision offensively. He just doesn't have any trouble with it.
Well, Kev, all I know is, and don't get me wrong, Makar's been fantastic and Hughes has been unbelievable, but I don't even think that they've been the best defenseman in the playoffs. The best young defenseman in the playoffs has been Miro Heiskanen.
Well,
He's
for
been
sure.
Incredible.
Yeah,
and he doesn't make mistakes.
The three best defensemen in the postseason have been the three people you guys have just talked about.
Right.
Like, these are all very young. And the other thing about Hughes that has really struck me is, and I know it's happened before, but how often are you entertained by one-on-one defense?
Right.
There have been a few times by watching Hughes take on, especially the speed guys on the other team. Like, it's fun to watch. Like, he pivots, he's there, they're trying to rush around him, and he angles them off. Like, he's been an effective defensive player. That doesn't mean he's perfect, but he's been effective as a one-on-one player, and he does it in an entertaining fashion because of his skating ability.
Yeah, his skating's really good.
I mean, it's really been phenomenal what these young players. Before we used to talk of young defensemen. Well, they're good for their age. Well, these guys are good. They're just flat out good.
Yeah,
and they really have been. Heiskanen has been phenomenal. Like, he's almost rendered Klingberg to be in like an extra piece.
I know.
Like, he was so important to that team, and then you watch the power play, and because of, with the tendency now is just to use one defenseman, all of a sudden Klingberg's not the power play guy anymore.
The big thing with Heiskanen is this. I think what would surprise me is how physical he is. Right, that's the piece of the puzzle that separates him, especially from Klingberg. I won't call Klingberg soft, but he's an offensive defenseman who's using more speed and skill. Heiskanen is willing to put you into the boards and put you through the boards, which is something that Klingberg lacks.
Well, I've watched that series really intently, and Bonus has flipped Heiskanen and Klingberg on the first and second power play back and forth. But Klingberg, who's an older defenseman and should be better two-way, has been abysmal at times in his own zone, giving away the puck, and Heiskanen doesn't make many mistakes. But Jan, going back to the Canucks, here's the problem with them in terms of their money and why they may pull away from Markstrom. You've got Pettersson, he's got one more year on his ELC. You've got Quinn Hughes, Pettersson has got 2 more years next year. No, excuse me, 1 more year.
1 more year because he's in year 2.
And so does Hughes. So you're talking about probably Hughes. I mean, if they try to get him on a long-term deal, you're talking 7, 8, 9 million possibly, and Pettersson around the same thing. So I don't know if they have the money to go out in free agency and sign a defenseman.
The problem is who's coming up in the pipeline to put him on defense. That's the key question.
They have and they also have Uutinen. Uutinen's another one who's really good.
Look, they obviously we talked about
some guys.
Next year's a flat cap. The year after is a flat cap, and it's a $1 million increase. Clearly, they need to reserve money to sign these guys, but it all depends on who's coming out on the marketplace. Maybe they go for a level below, like a $3 to $4 million defenseman. But as we've seen this series, that blue line's been pretty horrific, other than Hughes.
Now, Kevin, I would not want to be in the spot of Peter DeBoer right now because he goes back to Leonard. Leonard plays the last 2 games. Now, I didn't think he played particularly bad yesterday, but he didn't make the big save when they needed it, and
he didn't win. Yeah,
he didn't win. And now you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I heard an interesting point. I think it was Brian Burke that mentioned it. Peter DeBoer was on the Sharks bench for the Vegas meltdown last year, and the goalie in that meltdown was Marc-Andre Fleury, and he wonders whether seeing that has colored him and towards Fleury to go with Leonard. Now you're in a game 7 and Leonard's lost 2 games in a row. I would think that maybe he would probably go back to Fleury, but who knows?
No, I think he's going to have to go with Fleury as well. But I
think at this point you got to go with Fleury. I agree. Leonard had his moments and he got him to a certain point, but you got to give Fleury his last shot here.
I think, to me, watching Fleury, he looks almost not Fleury. Sorry, watching Leonard looks almost shell shocked in terms of what's happening. I mean, just in terms of some of the goals he's allowed and just the way things have turned so quickly. I think putting in Fleury gives that team a shot in the arm which is what they need right
Yeah,
now.
they
They kind of wipe the slate clean and flip the switch. And it's granted, it's probably better they don't have the extra day to stew over the loss, that they get right back at it. But I do think Fleury will probably help them.
They just need to stop a few pucks, because at the end of the day, they had so many scoring chances. Riley Smith probably could have had 5 goals himself. With all the breakaways he was getting shorthanded, and Demko just stoning him every time. Like, is that going to happen every game? I don't know. I think Demko will give up a few.
The thing that I've noticed also is the thing that they're not doing, they're going top shelf glove side. I haven't seen them go top shelf blocker side, which to me is probably where Demko might have a weakness, because he's stopping everything low and stopping everything glove side.
I tell you why they don't do it, because his shoulder pad's so big.
Right.
With the blocker, there's not much to shoot at. He's not the greatest glove guy. He's good. And you saw last night when they went high glove, he stopped it, but he didn't catch it. He was able to just knock it over the so that's why they shoot for glove, because that is actually his weakness.
Now, I haven't had many complaints about the NHL scheduling. Obviously, in the bubble, everything has been, travel is not part of this. So, I think that they pretty much, even though there's been some back-to-back situations, they pretty much did a great job. But I question having Vegas, Vancouver playing Game 7. When they're not gonna be moving from Toronto to Edmonton. Why couldn't they just wait, put that on Saturday night, and instead of having these teams playing back-to-back Thursday, Friday for a Game 7?
Yeah, I mean, I don't quite get that either. I'm sure it has to do with television, because
I was going to say NBC probably had nothing on the schedule.
Yeah, but saying all that, I just think we get too carried away with these back-to-backs. You know how I feel about this. I mean, it's almost become self-fulfilling. Yeah, I mean, these guys, the average player, plays 17 minutes of a game. I mean, it only taxes the goalies, in my opinion.
I can tell you, it just popped in my head why they're playing back. First of all, they're playing a 4:00 Game 7, Dallas, Colorado, and then they're playing and then Vegas, Vancouver. I'm not sure what the time. I'm probably 9:45, or maybe it's 8:00. But the reason that they're not having two Game 7s on Saturday is because NBC has the Kentucky friggin' Derby.
Right, that is why.
Oh yeah, that is why. Yeah,
and that's ridiculous. But
it's not ridiculous. Like, that's a reality.
No, that's the reality of the fact.
I'm with Kevin in the sense that I get it from the goalie perspective, but they aren't traveling, and most of these guys aren't 35 years old and are still used to the times that they played tournament play, where literally you had to do this all the time. Every tournament, World Juniors, things like that, they all did that at points in their career. So it's not like they can't do it.
Right.
And, I always bring this up, but just think about it in terms of the real life and the real world. Imagine in any other profession that the expectation is an inferior performance on a back-to-back work.
Right.
You're a neurosurgeon and you operate on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, you got another, brain surgery to do, and the expectation is on that second day you're just not going to be as good.
Hey, if he's going to do
I'm sure you'd want to say you caught me on my off day.
Yeah. If he's going to do spinal fusion surgery, I want it the first day.
Well, for sure. And the same thing on, firemen and police.
A lot to think about.
And, it just, I think somehow we just overthink this, and I think we planted the seed long ago. And I know I've seen statistics that show that, on the back-to-backs, the second game, they're not as good. But I think we've kind of created that monster ourselves.
Yeah.
The one thing I think we'll all agree with is that the bubble play is so weird that, records are going to be broken. Different things are happening. So, like, even players are rolling with everything at this point because they know nothing is going to be like it was anyhow. So I think players will be fine.
Yeah.
Well, okay, and I just want to go back to the one point that you made, Kev, about the Dallas, Colorado, because I've been watching that series a lot, and Dallas in Game 4 possibly had the most dominant 20 minutes of the entire playoff of any team on another team. They were up 3-0 against Colorado. They beat them into the ground. It was an incredible period, and then you could see them downshifting into first gear and letting Colorado back in the game, and Colorado almost tied it at the end of the second period with I think they had a 2-man advantage, made it 3-2, and then the bad goal from Francouz, and then the Makar error made it 5-2. And even though Colorado came back to make it 5-4, Dallas held on for game to win game 4 and go up 3-1. But the way that they played from the second period on is the way that they've played in game 5 and game 6. They've played scared. And remember, last year against St. Louis, they were up 3-2 and blew that series. So, and they added Perry and they added Pavelski to bring some veteran expertise to a team that they thought was 1 or 2 players away. And honestly, I don't see much of a change from this year to what they did last year against St. Louis.
Yeah, and what we're saying is, too, that, usually when you see a 3-1 lead, it's not the underdog with the lead. And I've felt that they've saw themselves as an underdog all the way through this, and they've played like that. They have played scared. They haven't played. They've played as if they were just afraid they were going to lose it, and especially in the last 2 games, and even going back into that game 4, as you said, they just haven't played with any measure of confidence whatsoever.
Yeah,
and I just you could just feel it coming. And I was because I'm writing for a betting site now. I've followed the odds on this. And the betting public, which is always an indicator, it's kind of like doing surveys. They never believed in Dallas.
Right.
They always were betting with the Colorado Avalanche, even when they were down 3-1. Colorado was favored to win, even though they had lost 3 of the first 4 games. They were favored to win 5, favored to win 6, and now they're favored to win 7.
And favored to win 7 with Timmins, possibly Landeskog, Calvert, Donskoy, and both goalies out with Michael Hutchinson. Michael Hutchinson might be the great equalizer, but Dallas actually has to get shots on goal to be able to beat them.
At this point, we knew it was a little bit uphill to get here, and I never wavered in the sense that I wasn't going to change my pick from Colorado as bad as it looked, and I still think they could win the Cup. Maybe guys will come back from injury, but in this series, just for this series, Nathan MacKinnon's playing the best hockey of his life, and they don't have an answer for it. And Jared Bednar does seem to be plugged in into how to get the best out of him, and that may be enough.
Yeah, well, I think what we've seen in this playoffs, don't we have to stop saying that Connor McDavid is the most dynamic player in the
NBA? Yeah.
I mean, not to diminish Connor McDavid, but they're most dynamic players now because they're both incredible. And he has just been so phenomenal, and he's just so entertaining to watch. And
it reflects what we've been talking about on this buzzcast for a while. Connor McDavid has literally no supporting cast other than Leon Draisaitl, maybe 1 or 2 other players, and MacKinnon does. Now, doesn't mean MacKinnon hasn't grown, and he has improved so dramatically, and he was a great player when he was drafted, but he's one of the best players in the league right now. But he's got a supporting cast. He's got Rantanen, he's got Kadri, he's got Landeskog. They have defensemen. Edmonton, I feel sorry for McDavid and Draisaitl because they can't surround them with good players, and that's what you need to do. And so fair. Anyways, all right, so let's talk about some of the news and happenings that have gone on in the last week or so. Kev, the downfall of the Boston Bruins maybe was expected when Tuukka Rask decided to leave the bubble. That's not blaming him, but I'm saying when you lose your number 1 goaltender and you're facing Tampa Bay, the odds will swing against you. And Tampa Bay, I think, proved after beating Columbus that they weren't going to be the same team that lost in the first round last year. But now Boston faces a situation where Chara says he's going to come back, but he's declining. He's human. He's 42 or 43 years old, and he's not going to be able to log the amount of minutes that he has in the past. And Torrey Krug pretty much said, either pay me, Boston, or I'm going to free agency. What do you look at when you look at the Bruins in terms of their future?
Well, I mean, they were sort of in a season like they needed to go for broke, and they weren't able to do that because even before this happened with Rask, I mean, going back to the end of the season, there was discussion about whether he was considering retirement.
Right.
So I think what happened here, the psychology of losing Rask was just devastating on him. It wasn't that goaltending was the only reason they lost, but I think it sort of changed everything because players, the big lie is that we don't care who's in net, we play the same way. Well, you never play the same way. It depends on who you have in net. You play differently depending on who's back there. I think we saw their lack of depth start to show up. They couldn't get any scoring beyond the guys that are their big guns, losing the players, losing Torrey Krug, not knowing what Rask is. I saw that Halak was quoted as saying he thought Rask was coming back, but who knows what lies ahead there. And I don't think the options for replacing Krug are not good. If you look at the free agent defenseman list, Pietrangelo probably isn't going to the Bruins, and he may sign in St. Louis, and then it's a pretty big drop off there. So you're going to at least get a different kind of player to replace Krug. And I thought the Bruins always underestimated the importance of Krug. Not only is he a good offensive player, but he's feisty. And I think what he lacked in size, he made up for just in his competitiveness. And I think they should have paid him.
They should have. I think it's too late now.
Yeah. Well, I don't know why they were now. They drew a line in the sand with Pasternak too. So, that's just their hardline approach, and it's cost them here.
Well, yeah, Kev, we were saying yesterday, I think players there are tired of saying we're going to take less to keep this core together because the core is aging. So now they're like, what? We're going to get our money now.
Well, Russ, I think what they're going to do is probably address it internally. They've got Vakanainen coming. Grzelcyk's a restricted free agent with arbitration eligibility. They like him, but I don't know whether he can step up and play a power play role or if that goes
he
to
can play a power play role.
Yeah, or they give McAvoy that option. They probably re-sign Chara, but I don't know if they're going to spend big money to bolster their defense. They have Lawson and Clifton, and I don't think anybody's there is there currently that can step in and replace the offense that Krug provides. And we know that power play is important. He's the quarterback.
Yeah, but they have McAvoy and they have Grzelcyk. Like, it's fine. They'll survive. It's the same as saying, well, I don't know, the Flyers power play isn't so great. Let's put Shane Gostisbehere on it. And it survives with Ivan Provorov because his shot gets on net. It's just not fancy like Shane Gostisbehere. Same thing. Now,
on the other side, Kev, Tampa Bay is going to have a big advantage here because they've had 3 or 4 days of rest going into game 1 of the Eastern Conference Final against a team that is going to be playing game 7 that's played 3 overtimes. Even if it's the Flyers, a team that has had some injuries, losing Couturier, you don't know whether he'll play game 7 or not. Probably not. But Tampa Bay is in a really great situation, and if Kucherov is back, which I've heard he's been skating, so he probably will be back for the start of that series, and they get Stamkos back, this is a locomotive that can't be stopped.
Well, for sure, and I know 31 NHL coaches would argue with me on this, but I think rest in the playoffs is overrated. I'd rather be in a momentum, keep playing, mode. I think those are the teams that always seem to do well when you just keep rolling and you're not thinking about it. And so I don't know. I mean, I guess you could argue that they needed time off for Kucherov, but the bigger thing for me, for Tampa, and I guess whoever they're going to play, whether it's the Islanders, is they're looking in the West, and this could, no matter what happens, now all of a sudden you're looking at either a beat-up Colorado team or a inferior Dallas team or maybe an upstart team, and Vancouver might win that. The team that I would fear the most could get knocked out. I mean, a game 7 is a flip of the coin, but the Golden Knights may not be in the Stanley Cup final. So if that's the case and you're the East, you're liking what you see is going on in the West because of all the injuries to Colorado and the fact that the Dallas team seems to lack confidence. And the Vancouver team, as much as we've all been impressed by, it's still a very young team.
Yeah, I mean they have so many defensive breakdowns.
Yeah, and so they're not a team that would scare me if I'm the Islanders or if I'm Philadelphia or if I'm Tampa Bay. So I think that's, if you're Tampa Bay, that's what you like more even than the rest of what's happened in the West.
One thing, Mike, Julian Gauthier did mention that even though Stamkos is out indefinitely, he mentioned him, and he still doesn't rule out his return. Now, we can't go with the normal thing here because, like, hockey writers are always like, well, if he's not skating, he's not going to come back. He has done this where he has literally skated a morning skate and played. If you remember, he didn't have to skate ahead of time or whatever. He's been able to do that before. So I wouldn't rule out that all of a sudden, middle of this series, all of a sudden Steve Stamkos is in the morning skate. Wouldn't shock me.
It's possible, and we've seen Tampa go with 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. I have a feeling, Kev, that if Stamkos does come back, he's going to end up playing fourth line minutes in power play, and they're going to take it easy on him because I don't think they want to throw him in there in a first or second line role, put too much stress on whatever injury he has, and have him get re-injured. He could play that fourth line instead of somebody like Carter or Hagee or Mitchell Stevens and help them out any way that he can. So, I mean, it's a bonus if they get him back based on how they've played so far.
Yeah, I don't think he's coming back. It sure doesn't feel that way to me, but we'll see. Yeah.
Now the strange trade this week of Jake Allen to the Montreal Canadiens. It made me scratch my head from a number of reasons. First of all, we know Montreal had a ton of draft picks. They had 14 draft picks, so them giving up a draft pick to improve their backup goaltending is not surprising. But Allen's making $4.3 million in the final year of his contract. We know that, I heard the statistic that Montreal, their backup goaltending behind Carey Price last year, had a goals against of 3.25 and a save percentage of .902. So basically, they wanted to upgrade their goaltending behind Carey Price and probably take some of the burden off of him. But $4.3 million for a backup goaltender when you're spending $10.5 on a starter and your team can't score, and that's the reason why they didn't advance in the playoffs. I question what Bergevin's doing. It's just baffling, that trade.
It was very odd. I tried to figure it out, and I almost felt like heck because I was thinking in my head that, okay, they were going to flip him. Maybe they were going to move him somewhere else. But obviously that was not the case because I couldn't quite figure out what that was all about. And, the price was fine. I mean, they gave up nothing, in my opinion.
Right.
It's with all the draft picks they had. But I don't know why you need that level of backup goalie. So I don't know. It's a mystery. And we can sit around and theorize about it all day, but I don't think we'll figure it out. I think he just felt he wanted a security blanket, and he's paying heavily for it.
And the funny thing is that they did St. Louis a favor by taking the whole $4.3 million cap hit. So now that opens up some flexibility for them. But the question is, and I've heard conflicting information, and I know that Elliot Friedman and Pierre LeBrun have written about Pietrangelo in the sense that, this move could be interpreted as them opening up space for him, but the fact that they still probably would have to trade another player. And do they want to cap themselves out with the financial situation with the league right now after trading for Falk and extending him, trading for Scandella and extending him? I mean, yeah, if he wants to go back there and give him a hometown discount, I'm sure they would be obliging. But if he wants to be paid amongst the top 5 defensemen in the NHL like he is, I can't see St. Louis and Pietrangelo having a marriage.
Yeah, although he continues to say he wants to re-sign there. I don't know. It just feels like it's still not done yet there. Like he could end up back there. It all depends on how he feels about because this is the thing that's really changed in the NHL. And in the old days, it was just about going to a place where you had a chance to win, but that's harder now to project. You don't know where that is. So now it comes down to other factors like, where you just want to go play because either you like the city or you like the coach or you like your teammates or your wife is from there or, a myriad of other factors. And so that's what we don't know about Pietrangelo is this. How does he feel about all that? Like that, has he always wanted to play in Toronto? Has he always wanted to play?
I mean, I'll say this. I mean, Steve Wino from AP, I know him real well. He tweeted that he thinks, you know what, they might sign Pietrangelo and go over with the summer cap like we talked about, and because Tarasenko is going to start the year late and worry about it when Tarasenko is healthy, and they might just do that.
Yeah,
talked about that a couple weeks ago.
Exactly right. And worry about it. Worry about it later. Yeah.
Go ahead, Jen.
No, we had said that a couple of weeks ago with the surgery. In terms of that would be a good possibility, especially since they say 5 months. But the problem is it's a recurrence, and he's got issues with both shoulders now.
Right.
Putting his availability in doubt. Right. The longer that goes, we've seen unfortunately that their injuries occurred during the season. By the time he's ready to come back, for all we know, unfortunately somebody else needs to go on long-term IR, and they free up salary that way.
Okay. Just quickly before we end the show, we're in Game 7 scenarios in these 3 series. I picked Vegas in shorter than 7. I picked Colorado, and I believe it's 6, and I picked Philadelphia in 7. So the only series that I'm waffling on is the Islanders, because Philly, without Couturier, I think is not as good of a team. The other ones, I'm going to stick with the predictions, but anybody want to change their predictions on their series?
I'm not changing them, but I do want to mention, we should talk about for a second, Oscar Lindblom. I mean, he played 17 minutes, and that was crazy. I mean, months and months ago, we made up these wristbands. We were just hoping, and we gave them out. We literally just gave them out at games, myself and Amy Irvin. We literally went hour and a half early, gave them to people. We didn't send them to anybody. We said, hey, come and meet us, and we'll give them to you. And we were just hoping the guy would get better. That's all we were hoping for. Hey, let's hope Oscar gets better. He can have a good life. The fact that he played 17 minutes in a hockey game, and I know people said, hey, he looked a little rusty early. He did, but then all of a sudden he looked pretty good. I mean, end of the day, this is a miraculous thing that's happened. I mean, 8 months and going from where he was with the bone cancer to chemo to actually playing on the NHL is miraculous.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a fantastic
way more important than the sport on the ice.
Yeah.
Yes, fantastic. Fantastic story. But just to finish off what I was saying, anybody want to change the picks for Game 7?
I had Islanders in 7. I'm sticking with it. I had Colorado winning. I'm sticking with it. The only one I'm waffling a bit on is Vegas now, given what Demko's done. I still think Vegas has a shot at wins that series.
Yeah, I'm sticking with what I have too. I have Vegas and Colorado and Philadelphia, and I'm sticking.
All this is proven that we're stubborn. That's all this is proven.
Yeah. Well, that nobody needed to tell me that. Okay, we'll review all these Game 7s on Monday. For the departed Ekelund, for Kevin Allen, for Jan Levine, and for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without